What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. A mixed bag today. We are going to introduce a new character. I shouldn't say a brand new character, but a new character anyway, into our lexicon and the fray, because Ross Dellenger did kind of a profile piece of the lead attorney in the NCAA case, the house case, if you will. Which is something that is going to strike fear in the heart of many. He is somebody who strikes fear in the heart of many across college athletics. The schools worry about potential bankruptcy issues, potentially having to cut sports, everything that could happen in the wake of that lawsuit, and what they're going to owe in basically NIL back pay. And I was interested to read about this and where some of the school's concern level on all of this is right now. Plus, he does have, this gentleman, a little bit of a suggestion or a list of options of how this all could end, which would be the new framework for how the NCAA would work, which I think is very much of note. If you are a conference realignment fan and you are somebody that has been a part of the channel for a while and you are aware of all the players, speaking of characters from the Big 12, the Pac-12 battle that we had for a while, one of our favorite characters is calling it quits, guys. And right on the heels of George Kliavkoff ending with the Pac-12, his partner in crime is unfortunately calling it quits as well. So we're going to need to discuss that. I actually have decent things to say about this guy as opposed to George Kliavkoff, who took some extra shots in the extra video that I put out for you guys earlier this week. But it is Kirk Schultz. Kirk Schultz is going to retire at the end of 2025, which he is a pretty big figure. He is involved in a lot of different areas with college football playoff. And then obviously we're just trying to keep the Power 2 conference, or the Pac-2 conference rather, alive with Washington State and Oregon State and everything that's been happening there. So we'll have to pour one out for Kirk Schultz here on the show today. I hope our web is here, because I know our web will have something to say about Kirk Schultz deciding to hang it up. We can also talk a little transfer portal, because while it has not been a wild transfer portal, it has been one that has hit the four corner schools pretty hard. Arizona State has been hit pretty hard, and Colorado has been hit pretty hard. And honestly, just a lot of the stuff that's coming out of Boulder, it's drawing ire and criticism from me, and I'm somebody that is not a Deion hater. I have not wanted to hate Deion. I have wanted to be kind of in his corner throughout all this. I think he is wildly fascinating and fun and good for the sport generally. But, the AD at Colorado complaining about the lawsuits that led us to the point where we would have multi-time transfers without a penalty in college athletics, complaining about that as the school that came in and immediately kicked out like 3/4 of the roster with Deion there. I mean, it's not great. Cormani McClain, one of the very high-profile transfers out of Colorado, who was one of the best defensive backs and one of the best players in the recruiting class a couple of years ago. Cormani McClain had some very pointed comments on his way out the door. He doesn't want to play for clicks. He wants to actually be developed in a program. That was a very interesting comment on his way out the door. So we can discuss all of that. And like Arizona State, one of the most high-profile transfers that we have had in this spring transfer portal is Jaden Rashada, who was a huge quarterback recruit that they picked up. He is gone, along with Arizona State's leading receiver. So the portal has not been particularly kind to the Sun Devils so far. That's what I've got for you guys. But if you have been here before, you can be a part of the show tonight. All you have to do is click the $ below the chat box in order to attach your donation to a chat. It will create a super chat and put it in a separate column for me. Ensures that you make it on the show tonight. And I could not do it without the extremely generous support of all of you guys who do that. Can't thank you enough. And I truly, truly do appreciate it. You allow me the opportunity to do this every single week for you guys, to bring you college football, college hoops, conference realignment content on a regular basis here. So I appreciate those who are able to support that way. If you cannot, it is very easy to still support the channel. Just one click, give me a like, hit that like button, and I would much appreciate that as well. That makes it very, very easy. You can also leave a comment either during the live video to stir things up there, or after the video, underneath the video in the comment section. All of that stuff really helps. Love me, hate me, agree, disagree, whatever it might be. Let me know what you think. And that will help spike that algorithm as well to help the channel. So thank you to everybody who does that as well. And of course, if you are not catching it live, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo is a very easy way to get your question or comment on the show as well. If you leave a donation there and you leave your question or comment there, I will kick off the next show by reading it. And that is why we start with my guy, Clint. Once again, Clint, I appreciate your support. Very, very generous, my friend. Thank you so much. And thank you for always finding a way to be a part of the show, even though you are not typically able to make it on live. Clint is here, and Clint says, ponied up a little extra in honor of BYU, ponying up 7 years and $30 million. Yeah, that's a hell of a starting salary, man. But when you're going to go grab one of the hottest NBA assistant coaches, that's probably going to happen. I'm doing the math there. That's what, a little over $4 million a year. That'd be like 4.15 million a year or something like that. Clint, I also appreciate this. Clint says, love that you spent time on the Super League and that you will shout until the cows come home. That's key. Yes. Look, I don't care what anybody, you guys can come pouring in the comments. In fact, I love those of you who come pouring in the comments to tell me that you disagree or that I'm wrong about the Super League. And I understand that it's not going to get adopted. I get it. And many channels that are more Big Ten, SEC focused, like may not care as much about it, spend as much time on it. But when you are an ACC or a Big 12 kind of based outlet, it's going to be more appealing to you because it is certainly a more equitable college football world, but it is also one that anybody deep down would say is objectively better for the sport. I will not stop saying that. Now, I'm not going to do every single show about the Super League, but yeah, you're going to hear a little bit more from me on that proposal. Clint says the leak threw down the gauntlet. ESPN and Fox have a choice, and we'll go with the people over Stanky if we are loud enough. I'm going to guess that was not a typo on Greg Sankey's name there. The Stanky Clint. That was well done. Very clever. The problem is, again, it will take, well, we've got it's a long road to hoe, right? Because we've got until like 2030 to do it. So I guess if you can keep some momentum for it from now until then, which is doubtful, at least in this current form, but maybe if things start to go poorly with the lawsuits, that will kick back up. And that is a very appropriate kickoff to this show because we are about to talk about the current state of the lawsuits and what is being said by the lead attorney who did a public session that Ross Dellenger really reported on. So that, I think, will be some of the key, Clint, is you got to continue to get pressure from these lawsuits. If the lawsuits continue to go against the NCAA and against these Power 4 schools that are fearing even the worst case scenario, some form of bankruptcy here, then they may be forced into adopting at least portions of that. So yeah, I will not shut up. You can tell me how stupid you think it is. You can tell me, just Big 12 flyover country, whatever, second-class citizens. That's fine. But, I've got this microphone and I'll continue to use it and say that. So appreciate your support, Clint, not only of the channel, but obviously of the Big 12 and the general well-being of college athletics. So you're a good dude, Clint. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Let's check in real quick with Daniel before we get rolling here. What's up, Daniel? Appreciate you, Daniel. Cat fan in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne. Thank you for being here, as always, my friend. Says, driving back from the K-State baseball game. Unfortunately, they didn't sweep the series, but the first two games were awesome. We'll watch the show when I get home. Hey, thank you, Daniel. Appreciate that. Look at the effort there. Like, pop it in to do it well on the way back and going to catch the show later. You're the best, Daniel. I appreciate you, my friend. I did not get to watch any of the game today. I was going to try to initially, but didn't work out. Had to go take care of a couple things. Had to mow, doing homeowner things now in the spring. But I did catch a little bit of Friday night. And Cats won. Big series victory for K-State over Oklahoma State. Much needed. They also beat Northeastern, which was a pretty nice win earlier this week. So good week for the Batcats to try and get back into contention for a spot in a regional, which very much hoping happens. They've been so close the last few years. So anyway, Daniel, appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for your support of the channel, and hope you enjoy catching the entire show later. Thank you, Daniel. All right, click the $ below the chat box if you want to be a part of the show tonight as we rip through this one. We start with Ross Dellenger's latest, very in-depth piece. I mean, this thing was long. There is a lot to digest here, where he is talking about Jeffrey Kessler, who is a name that we haven't really talked about on this channel, but he is a very important figure because he's the lead attorney in seemingly all of these NCAA cases, but particularly the one everyone's paying attention to, which would be the House case. So let me read this story to you. It says, on Thursday, within a matter of a few hours, the current unruly state of college athletics was on full display. The NCAA's transfer portal buzzed to life with dozens of new additions who've been lured away by financial inducements from booster-led collectives. The state of Virginia passed legislation that defies NCAA rules by permitting its schools to directly compensate athletes starting on July 1st. And finally, a national association filed a third complaint with the National Labor Relations Board seeking to make athletes employees. The Virginia piece here is interesting, especially juxtaposed against, like, hey, the NCAA probably feels like, oh, we just, made a concession and pushed closer toward what really should be happening here with the policy that went in place and became approved at the NCAA level about the schools being able to, like, directly push to collectives. So it's now no longer illegal to be like, hey, if you come to school here, go check out XYZ collective. They can help you get set up with your NIL deal. You can now do that, but the school still can't directly be the one compensating the athletes. So the NCAA, once again, continues to lag behind. Like, every time they do something, they're still like a step or two or five behind what's actually going on. Even when making an effort, it is funny to see them still be behind, because the state of Virginia was like, okay, look, you can continue to do this silly, outdated, like, we'll try to catch up with the system sort of thing with the collectives. We're just going to bypass you. We're going to let the schools go ahead and directly pay them themselves. Like, just take the weird middleman out of here. What is, if you imagine explaining to somebody 10 years ago, like, a collective and what the point of that actually would have been here, it is kind of silly. And the NCAA is getting another law ruling shoved in their face, basically, by what happened there with the state of Virginia. Legislative, let's just say another legislative / law defeat for the NCAA. So Howard University is where Jeffrey Kessler spoke. So Dellenger says, meanwhile, within an auditorium on the campus of Howard University, the man who at least partially controls any future college athletics model, the guy perhaps responsible for both bringing disorder to the landscape as well as determining a more stable future, took the stage for a 90-minute panel discussion. Dressed in a dark suit and striped tie, Jeffrey Kessler peered through spectacles at the audience before him. Kessler, 69, is the lead attorney in what is shaping up to be the most revolutionary case in NCAA history, an antitrust lawsuit that seeks billions of dollars in retroactive money damage to former athletes for name, image, and likeness pay. This, I thought, was one of the more intriguing lines of the story to me. This case has the potential to, for one, cost the power conferences and NCAA enough money that many fear bankruptcy, and second, topple all NCAA compensation rules related to NIL. The bankruptcy thing, I guess I'm sure that's been out there to some extent before, but I had not seen it spelled out quite like that people are thinking about, like, bankruptcy here. Like, I know the schools are worried about it. I mean, I know that, like, K-State is worried about it and having to think about, like, what do we do when this ruling comes out? And if it is going to be, as the article will go on to say, $15 to $20 million that we're going to be responsible for, that individual Power 4 schools will be responsible for, like, how the hell are we going to do that? We have heard about Oregon State and Washington State. That was a part of the reason that they got the money withholdings on the way out the door for the departing Pac-12 schools, because they wanted to make sure that they built up the quote-unquote war chest enough so that they would have money to compensate for things like this. Like, schools have been preparing for it, but I just had not heard bankruptcy. I mean, I even heard worried about having to drop sports. And that is something that Kessler goes after later on here in the article, and apparently at some point in this panel discussion, but worried about having to drop sports. Had heard all of that, but the bankruptcy thing was kind of new to me. So I was just like, damn. And as far as Kessler, he's painted here at one point. What does it say? Kessler portrayed often as a villain across the sports landscape. I don't know. I would think you've got to be a really hardened, long-time, stuffy NCAA staffer to be portraying him as a villain, really. And I guess I get if you're I was going to say maybe if you're not a Power 2 school, would you think? But really, I don't think that's Kessler is having a ton of effect on that. That could actually be something that's better in a way, if depending on what system it is that we get coming out of this for everybody involved. I just don't. It seems to me you'd have to be stuck in the like, oh, these athletes, they shouldn't complain. They're getting room and board and an education and all that. I can see how if you're in that position, you would think that this guy is the enemy. But really, he is taking care of some very necessary things here that have needed to happen for a while. Well, these schools make so much money and they throw it at the coaches and administrators and facilities, and the players don't get a cut. We're evening some of that out. And this guy may be laying the groundwork for what an actual more stable future would look like for things based on what happens with this case. Remember, if you're somebody that kind of supports the Super League, or at least the ideas included in the Super League proposal, we heard Andrew Marchand say on this channel, like, the House lawsuit is one of many lawsuits, but the biggest that could push everybody into having to adopt some of the things that were in the Super League proposal. So keep that in mind, too, when you're thinking about Jeffrey Kessler and the role that he is playing in all of this. There's something else, too. I'm back to the article. There is something else, too. A settlement of the case could produce a future athlete compensation model that will shape the industry for years to come, possibly bringing structure and solutions to the landscape, likely in the form of athlete revenue sharing. Here's a quote from Kessler. Quote, "A possibility is that this all gets settled in our litigation in which we agree on a new system with the NCAA. There are proposals out there by President Charlie Baker to compensate the athletes. There are systems that could be negotiated as a part of a settlement. That's up to the NCAA. They'll have to decide if they can actually agree on what it is, and then we have to agree with it." During his discussion Thursday, Kessler, portrayed often as a villain across the sports landscape, espoused plenty of the same views that those within college athletics hold. Yeah, so this would be another point. His views are not really all that different from what a lot of people already view inside the sport. For one, he believes the industry finds itself in this predicament because of surging salaries for coaches and administrators. Like so many fans and stakeholders, he supports leaving the NCAA basketball tournament untouched. Okay, gotta like that about the guy, right? He showed public support even for Baker's Project D1 proposal to compensate athletes. And Kessler said of Baker, quote, "He gets it." The Baker proposal, I think, is fine. A lot of people would say that doesn't really go quite far enough, which it probably does not, but at least would be a step in the right direction. And in music to so many's ears, he believes that the power conference schools should be thought of and treated differently than any others within the NCAA's 97 conference organization, suggesting that an athletic department's finances be an indicator of how much revenue it's required to share with athletes, which, again, logically would make sense, right? If you're making more money, these athletes are generating you more money, then they should get more. It should be probably a percentage cut. Quote, "Here's what people have to get in their heads. The Power 5 schools are not like everybody else," he said. And that should be music to our ears, right? Here in Big 12 country, if you're a Big 12 fan, Power 5 schools are not like everybody else. He used Power 5 instead of Power 2. Hell, maybe Oregon State and Washington State need to be on board with this guy. If he's going to say Power 5 instead of Power 2. We're living in a Power 2 world, and I fear that it's not often that you're going to be hearing the term, well, certainly not Power 5, but even Power 4 all that much anymore because of the situation that we're in. Animated and boisterous, Kessler sent the crowd into applause, laughter, and awe at various times. He told the story of how he got involved in college sports when he learned that major college football programs had evolved into gigantic business that prohibited compensation to athletes. This struck a chord with me, he said. 9 years ago, he began his march leading a lawsuit against the NCAA. So this is the Alston case, another huge one that eventually led to the high court handing the NCAA perhaps its worst of many court losses, a 9-0 defeat. Total whitewashing in the Alston case. And quote, that set in motion everything you see today, he said. So this has been a guy, I guess, when I talk about, someone who's been portrayed as a villain, this is a guy that's got a long history there where people would probably be looking back at the Alston case like, man, you really got this thing started or gave it a giant push forward to the point that we're at today, where we are just losing everything. Every single possible lawsuit out there, we are taking big time L's. Kessler spoke deeply about athletic department finances, outlined the 4 most likely possibilities of a new college model, and repeatedly declined to discuss any potential settlement, which, I mean, that seems to make sense, right? I wouldn't think that guy who's involved in the case would be out there talking about potential details of a settlement, but there has been, as Dellenger is going to explain, a lot of talk among the conferences and within the college sports world of a settlement and what exactly that settlement would look like. Says, however, for months now, the NCAA and power conferences have been engrossed in settlement discussions among themselves. Not a well-kept secret in the sports world. A settlement is a twofold issue. Schools are responsible for likely more than $1 billion in back pay, which that is crazy. Think about that, $1 billion. Plus must agree to a future compensation model for athletes. Settlement discussions have ranged widely, and the details of such have mostly been kept private. But several athletic admins briefed on the matter say they're preparing to share revenue with athletes as a part of a potential settlement, an outcome much preferred over the lingering possibility of athlete employment. Which is interesting because, like, athlete employment versus revenue sharing, I thought maybe that would go hand in hand. But I guess with employment, then you're talking about a whole host of other things like healthcare, things like that would have to be offered to them that would be a little bit different than the current system right now, that would bring in just a lot of other things that they would have to worry about. So look, revenue sharing seems like a pretty nice start on all of that. Figures are murky and steadily evolving, but many administrators believe that any settlement agreement comes with an annual per school revenue sharing figure of $15 to $20 million. $15 to $20 million per school. So when you think about that, like, if a school just gets hit with like a $15 to $20 million budget shortfall one year, all of a sudden, or does it get spread out over a couple of years? I'm not entirely sure how that would work, but think about like what the Big 12 TV deal is that we're talking about that they just signed, $31.7 million. So you're losing at least about it'd be like 50 to 60% basically of your TV revenue for 1 year. I mean, that would be a huge deal. That would be a huge deal for schools to have to work with and deal with here. That's why you've got a lot freaking out, particularly those that won't be making as much from their TV deals, which would be the Big 12 and the ACC. Defendants in the case include the 5 power leagues and the NCAA as a whole. What about the little guys? Most Group of 5 and FCS programs do not generate a profit, and their athletic departments are often subsidized by university and student fees. Kessler's focus is on the top 70 or so programs, many of which generate an upward of $100 million in ticket sales, television contracts, and donations, a majority of it related to football. There was a quote in here that I left out where Kessler was really going after. He was just like, if you're basically people who would use like, what is Lehigh going to do in all of this? Like, how will they handle the payment? And he said, like, look, that's not your concern. The concern is going to be, I'm going after these schools that make a ton of money. They'll be able to handle it. Don't waste your time worrying. Like, kind of like that's, almost like a straw man there. What happens to an Ivy League school and all of this, because it's the Power 4 that have to be treated differently. And he said so in another quote here. Quote, you really have to think about the Power 4 as different. The reason we get tied in knots is because we conflate these schools who have developed these gigantic independent commercial businesses with the schools who are still just educational institutions with extracurricular activities. When you try to come up with one rule for all, you go crazy. You have to look at the schools differently. For the ones with the money, there's plenty of money to compensate the athletes and share it with the women's sports. Kessler outlined what he referred to as scare tactics from college leaders, most notably their fear of any revenue sharing model resulting in the elimination of college sports. Quote, if you are paying your athletic director $3.5 million because you have the money and you report rather that you have a $100,000 loss, you're making money. So he's saying if you're paying an AD $3.5 million, but you report that you have a 100 grand loss, you are making money. He cited the salary of Alabama strength coach David Ballou, who earns $950,000, which is pretty wild. If he only made 500 grand and those athletes, largely black athletes on the football team, got some of that money, no one is going to see that as a bad thing except the people who are trying to hold up and profit from the system. Kessler also questions why football players should miss out on compensation because they hold the responsibility of funding the department with the revenue in which they generate. Okay. I mean, a lot of this I feel like is getting a bit repetitive there, but you get the idea of where this guy stands. And honestly, I don't know, man. It's hard to disagree with much of what he is saying. Like the schools, the athletic departments clearly make tons of money. They've got plenty of money. They would have to redirect in this case where some of it is going, but theoretically there should be a path forward there somewhere, at least for most. But I understand why for the schools it is scary because right now that's having to redirect a lot of money and resources. And how do we do that? We're already facing being behind $15 to $20 million, however long it would take us to make that work or pay that off. There's just a lot that's staring them in the face. And this is, there were years where there was none of this stress and you were building huge buildings and coaches and admins were being paid millions and millions of dollars and it didn't really matter. This is the other end of that. That was writing a check. Now the check needs to be cashed, right? You got to make sure that you're writing a check. Well, your mouth writes a check that you're can't cash. That sort of a thing here. That's basically what's happening to all of these schools. But this, I think, is maybe the most important part of what was said here by Kessler and that Ross Dellenger reported on. And that is what's next. Like what happens next? So how does this end? What's the new model look like? Kessler detailed 4 possibilities. So this is the guy, he wouldn't talk about a settlement, but this is what he's laying out as like, these are the 4 possibilities of where things go from here. Schools can be concerned about money and it's easy for the schools to be concerned about it. It's perhaps not something that like the average fan cares about. It's not like, okay, you guys will have to figure out how to deal with a $15 to $20 million shortfall. What is more interesting is like, all right, what's the new system going to be? How are we going to operate under the new parameters of the system? So here we go. The guy who is the head lawyer in all of this says this is what will happen. It'll be one of these 4 conferences. So number 1 is conferences. NCAA economic regulations around compensation are eliminated, and the individual conferences compete with each other by setting their own regulations and rules, creating one marketplace standard for athlete compensation. Are we ready for that? Are we ready for the conferences competing with each other by setting their own regulations and rules? Like, I started thinking about that. I was like, do we need more of that really? When we're already dealing with Power 2 versus kind of Secondary 2 and then Group of 5, like everybody else, already like a tiered system. Like, what does that look like? Are you getting a bigger cut, bigger percentage in like the Big Ten or the SEC? I don't know. Are you competing to make that number a little bit higher? Would the Big Ten and SEC be competing with each other? Like one conference trying to make that number a little bit higher so that the athletes theoretically would be getting a little bit more money. I don't know. Do we really need that? Like, why can't we all just, this is a part of the problem of college sports right now is never having, among many problems, but never having just one governing body that was out there like truly looking out for the best of everybody and ruling over, needing like a commissioner of college football to be operating in things for the good of the game, the good of the sport. Like, come on, man. But can we not leave it to the conferences to be doing this on their own? Number 2 is employment. And this seems to be one that the schools obviously don't really like, but athletes are made employees, or at the very least, they unionize in an effort to collectively bargain with their school or conference. Employment. Now, if they're employees and having to sign contracts, that could make some of the transfer portal stuff a little less wild and crazy. and collectively bargaining. You'd have to collectively bargain how exactly those like contracts would work. But that is something that could be done if they are going to be eventually deemed employees. And litigation certainly could get us there. Revenue sharing is number 3. Revenue sharing would be a settlement for that from the House case produces a revenue sharing model for athletes. That seems to be the one that would have more momentum, at least from the schools right now. Just going into revenue sharing as opposed to the full-on employment status. So you would take some of that money that's coming in, like total money that you're bringing in for the athletic department, and you kick a percentage of that to the student athletes. If you remember back to the Super League proposal, they had a whole system that would reward seniors more than juniors, more than sophomores, more than freshmen for their revenue sharing portion of it. Number 4, the fourth way it could go is Congress. Kessler says the federal government could take action with legislation that grants legal protection to the NCAA and potentially creates a carve-out for college athletes to earn compensation in a more regulated way. But don't get your hopes up about that one because Kessler did say, quote, I think that is the least likely way. Until Congress can agree on anything else, I'm not sure they're going to agree on anything that would be good for college sports. Yeah, I mean, basically the point there is just like, look, we got a lot of problems in Congress. They can't agree on anything. They can't come together on anything. Why would we think that they would do that for college athletics, especially when we have so much else going on? We're in an election year. Like, that seems like one that I would not waste a whole lot of time worrying about. Dellenger says there is, of course, another option. The NCAA and college conferences do nothing, continue to get litigated in court, and eventually find themselves bankrupt. That choice, though, is well past its expiration date. And then we get another Kessler quote. Change is here. It's not going to stay the same. It's already different. The best thing that everybody should think about is, okay, how can we make this change the most positive change for everyone involved? Stop living a vision that doesn't exist. Face the realities here because it's going to happen. The question is, are you going to be a part of the change or not be a part of the change? And it seems like that's where we're going. We're going to it. Like they understand they're going to have to do something. We are getting changes, even if, like, again, back to the Virginia lawsuit, they're a step ahead by allowing their schools to just give the money directly to the student athletes, whereas everybody else is still having to go through a collective. But at least the NCAA is being like, all right, fine, whatever, use your collectives. Like we seem to be getting to the point where, yeah, they realize they're going to have to do something. A deadline looms. The House case goes to trial in January. After his presentation, Kessler hurried through the auditorium, his luggage in tow, shuffled down the stairs, and before exiting the door, shared one more comment. Quote, if we get to December and nothing else has happened, we are going to win before a jury in December, and we are going to win before a jury in January. So strong comments there. Strong comments there from Kessler, but it's hard to argue. I mean, when was the last time the NCAA got a real true victory in one of these things, right? If I were Kessler, I'd be confident as hell in that. Like, if we're not going to settle and this thing's going to actually go to court, we're going to be fine, man. Going to be just fine. I'd be pretty confident if I were him too. So there is your Ross Dellenger update on the House case, how fearful schools are of this, and what the lead attorney in the case thinks about all of this. A nice little window into the existential threats that are facing college athletics right now. All right, if you want to be a part of the show, click the $ below the chat box. In order to do so, we'll attach a donation to your chat and make it a super chat. Guarantees that you get on tonight. You can control the content, make your voice heard, and support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12, conference realignment, college football, college hoops content on a regular basis on this channel. Could not do it without all of your support. Totally free way to support the channel is just to like the video. If you could, that would be amazing. Leave me some comments, whether it's in the live chat, whether it's underneath the video, if you're watching after the fact. All of that stuff really helps. And John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo, if you want to leave a question or comment there. I will kick off the next show with it. What's up, Pacific Northwest Ute? Pacific Northwest Ute said, I thought AD stood for after deficit. Hashtag play for pay. Oh, play for pay. Okay. Pacific Northwest Ute was thought supposed to be THOT, as in, like, you know what the kids would say, a thought. we're getting like some, maybe I shouldn't say like Gen Z language. I'm pretty sure that's like Gen Z-ish, but I don't know. Maybe it's not, and they would call me old. I'm 34 now, so they may be looking around calling me old for that one. But that caught my eye. Pacific Northwest Ute. David, what's up, David? Appreciate you, David. Thank you for being here. David says, John, just donate 20 mil to the Cats and get a dorm named after you. If I had 20 mil, if I had just 20 mil, like lump sum 20 mil that I would have to give to the school, it's not like hey, you're making so much money that you have 20 mil to give every single year. Because if I had 20 mil to give every single year, I would just be like, all right, well, here, now we're going to have K-State's going to have the Big Ten TV contract, basically, right? I mean, it wouldn't be quite that, but we'd be close, we'd be getting into the ballpark of that. We'd be making like, maybe closer to Notre Dame overall TV numbers. I'm just going to give you this 20 mil every single year. Now, if it's just a 20 mil block, I'm going to say this is every single year going toward NIL. This is NIL money for the Cats. Take this $20 billion and use it. I don't need buildings. I understand, buildings would be there forever, whatever. I need the school to win a championship and have it be because of the NIL money that I'm pumping in there. So we're going to get more NIL money than anybody and go attack it that way. That's what we're doing with my 20 mil. But, John Kurtz Hall has a nice ring to it too, David. So I understand where you're going with that. Back in the day, I mean, it would have been athletic facilities that I would have gone with there. It would have been like the, John Kurtz indoor practice facility or something like that. But it's not what we're doing anymore in college athletics, which is why this current era that we're in can't last too super long, right? Where it's all NIL fueled benders from the boosters here, because then eventually you're going to need to start paying for facilities. And then if your donors are already fatigued from NIL and not wanting to give to that, like, how are you going to get the facilities? Eventually you'll have these players making tons of money and then practicing in like crappy facilities because no one's going to have the money left over to build facilities. So because of that, right, there has to just be a shelf life on the current system that we're in and how all of that works. We've got some other NCAA news. They did approve a 2-minute warning in helmet communications for football next year, which is, the 2-minute warning thing. They try to make a case. Probably the funniest part about this here is they try to make a case like, oh, it'll lead to more comeback chances late in games, right? Because you have another opportunity to stop the clock there. It's basically a free timeout, so it can make the games more exciting. And it's not going to actually add, they're trying to make the case it's not going to actually add more commercials. It'll just take the place of one of those, like, okay, for now, that's what it is. If that is accurate, for now, that's what it is. But eventually, that's now added another spot where you could be slipping in more commercials. I have to be skeptical of it, where it's like, we'll just slip this in now, and we're going to say that it's not going to actually lead to more commercials. But that's now another implement, something into the game that has given you a potential avenue for more commercials at some point. So I don't like it. Why do we need it? I guess maybe it will lead to more exciting finishes, and at some point I could turn around and say, all right, I guess that was kind of cool, but I don't see any real reason for it right now. And I just you don't need to make the college game a complete replica of professional football. Like, let's continue to keep some of the same idiosyncrasies that we used to have that made college football great and just made it different from the NFL or the NFL light. Let's not do that. But I do want to get to Kirk Schultz. I want to make sure that we get to Kirk Schultz here on the show because Kirk, we're going to have to pour one out for him, ending his career. Not only was he a major player in conference realignment with the Pac-12, Big 12 saga, and he was one of the key players that we were talking about a lot on this channel. But beyond that, he was also once the president of good old Kansas State University, and that was during a round of conference realignment back around like 2010, 2011. Kirk Schultz was the president at K-State at that point in time. So I've even got a little bit of backstory there. So the partner in crime of one George Kliavkoff, we will give him an appropriate send-off here in just a moment. But first, we check in with Calico Willie. What's up, Calico Willie? Calico Willie says, howdy, John. Been a while. Appreciate you, Calico Willie. I've been watching more Three Ma. Yes, if you're a K-State fan, make sure you check out the Three Ma podcast. We had Jerome Tang on last week. You can find that right here on YouTube if you search for it. But it was great stuff with Jerome Tang. You're going to try and out that live eventually. Just wanted to say hi. What's up, Calico? Put that live, not out. I'm a little confused. You're gonna try and put that live. Okay, you're gonna try and put that live eventually, like a live Three Ma. We do it occasionally. It's hard. Like, we're usually recording that. We all have day jobs, and so we have to record that early in the morning. Like, we're usually recording that like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's really tough to do those live. Plus, like, we have to have a producer coordinating everything. If it's live, it's more difficult than just me popping on here. So you'll see us do it every once in a while. Like, we try to do like a pregame show for a football game once a year, and then a postgame reaction. I know we did the Oklahoma game a couple of years ago. Did we do one last year? Big 12 championship game. I know we did a live show. So try to work them in when we can, Calico, but it's a little tougher with Three Ma, just because we're coordinating with all our schedules, and we're usually doing it at a time when nobody, on a Monday morning, like, we're going to record at like 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Probably not going to get a lot of live action on that. So most of it is just dictated by when we record. The live shows, if you are a Patreon member, which, hey, might as well throw it out, patreon.com/3ma. If you're a Patreon member, we'll do those. It's been about like once a month. We do a live show on Patreon. So if you do pay the $5 a month on that, to get the extra content, we do try to do some of those. And then those would typically be more in the evening. So we try to work them in when we can. They are definitely fun. They're definitely fun to do. But yeah, hopefully we're still scratching the K-State itch. As far as that goes, Calico, appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for popping back in, and for the kind words, and for checking out both Three Ma and the YouTube channel. Always love to see you and your support, my friend. Kirk Schultz. I do want to say this about the guy. He was a kind of infuriating figure during the Big 12, Pac-12 stuff, because he was the Pac-12's biggest cheerleader, right? That's why we all rolled our eyes. I would say mostly, maybe more than hated, just kind of rolled our eyes at Kirk Schultz, because he was always gassing up Kliavkoff. That's another term the kids would use, gassing up. He was always gassing up Kliavkoff. He was gassing up what the TV deal was going to be. He was as big a cheerleader as you could possibly have been for that conference. And you know what? That's because that was the move that he should have been doing. That's what he should have been doing the whole time. He was in a position where he knew, like, his school desperately needed the conference to survive. We've now seen what happened when the conference did not survive. That was what he needed, was for the TV deal to be great, for teams not to leave, for people to buy in. And so he was trying to get people to buy in as much as he could. And anytime he was going to speak publicly or privately, or, be an anonymous source to John Canzano, like, of course it was going to be glowingly positive about what was going on, because that served his self-survival instincts. And anybody in the Big 12 should probably understand that, and at least have some empathy towards that. And I definitely do. Doesn't mean we didn't clown on him sometimes during that saga, because some of the things that were coming out there and some of the things that he was backing up from Kliavkoff were kind of ridiculous. But I will certainly come around to say, like, I get where he was coming from. I get why that did happen, because the guy had to have that happen. Having said that, it is kind of, maybe funny is the wrong word, but it just is interesting to look back and be like, hey, by the end of 2025, which is when Kirk Schultz is going to retire, George Kliavkoff will be long gone. Kirk Schultz will be long gone. I guess John Canzano will still be out there, but we're slowly losing some of the characters from one of the most entertaining sagas in the history of conference realignment, and certainly in the history of this channel, which was the year of the Big 12 v. the Pac-12. So this story from the Seattle Times commemorates Kirk Schultz. Washington State University President Kirk Schultz announced Friday that he will retire at the end of next year, bringing his nearly decade-long stint as the university's top leader to an end. The announcement comes as the university continues to grapple with the implications of the implosion of the Pac-12. Schultz has been at the forefront of the fight to ensure that the conference's only remaining members, Oregon State and Washington State, continue to have a seat at the table of college athletics, whatever that future might look like. So, yeah, I mean, there is that aspect of it, right? Like Schultz, and I guess by the end of 2025, I'd imagine that they will have a pretty good idea of what, whether it's going to be a new conference that they put together, which there have been some whispers about that. Greg Flugar, I know, has done a little bit on that. If you check out his channel, which you should anyway, peek around the corner. Great for college football fans. If you're into what we're doing here on this channel, you should definitely check out what Greg is doing. But by that point, hopefully Washington State will have basically made the transition. They will hopefully have basically been able to hand things off and the new president can take over from there. So the timing doesn't seem to be like a real huge issue here. And I can appreciate Schultz sticking it out through here. He's sticking it out longer than the athletic director, Pat Chun, who has already decided to leave for arch rival Washington, right? So at least there is that. But at the same time, if you think about the way that this news has been delivered for Washington State, like they lose their high-profile basketball coach who had a tremendous year, and they lose him within the conference. Then they find out their athletic director is going to freaking Washington, right, to go to their rival, who was a big part of the reason that they're in the position that they're in right now, which is kind of screwed. That happens, and now they're finding out, like, oh, God, like Kirk Schultz is leaving too. Now, thankfully, at the end of the next year. So you got plenty of time here. But, man, complete and total leadership change in the face of all the existential crises that are kind of threatening the university right now. That is a lot. It is a lot of change. Schultz's retirement was met with an extended silence from the board. Chair Lisa Shower said during the meeting that his retirement has been discussed with the regents since June, which has allowed them to prepare and take the proper steps to identify the university's next president. Wow, since June. God, I kind of missed that detail when I read this earlier. So we're in April. So we're talking like they've been aware of this for like 10 months at this point. That is a pretty long buildup. Last year, Schultz, who replaced the late Elson Floyd Jr. as Washington State's president, sat in the Whitman County Courthouse as Washington State and Oregon State won legal control over the remaining Pac-12 assets over the objection of the former members. That's another thing here. It's a consolation prize in every sense of the word, but Schultz has done a pretty good job, I think, in the aftermath of the Pac-12 implosion. Dealt basically an impossible hand. He's played it, I think, as well as you really could with being able to, yes, get that extra money, settle with the outgoing schools, put together like, hey, we're going to do the 2-year thing. We're going to take advantage of this 2-year gap, give ourselves the best opportunity to put together or find the best conference home that we can after that. They found a spot for all the sports besides football to go play in a conference, like that, get your non-revenue sports in a legitimate conference. There's been a lot that I think has been handled very well since things went really, really south, which I will give Kirk Schultz credit for that. Kind of Bob Bowlesby-esque, I think, which is like Bob Bowlesby, it was a consolation prize. You lost Texas and Oklahoma, but he did react very swiftly to go procure 4 new schools and make that happen before he exited. So I think actually, in a lot of ways, this does kind of mirror the whole Bob Bowlesby arc. Once he took the huge blow, looked like things were going to be totally crashing down, and he made the most of it. That's really what Kirk Schultz, I think, has been able to do at Washington State since all the bleep went down. He serves on the College Football Playoff Executive Board and successfully advocated for revenue distributions for the remaining Pac-12 members this spring. Most recently, he vocally lamented former athletic director Pat Chun's decision to leave Washington State for the same role at rival University of Washington. So that's what we got. That's the basis of the article. The rest of the stuff in the article, you already know. A little bit of detail about the current position of Washington State and where things are at there. So, hey, to Kirk Schultz, as I drink out of my AutoZone Liberty Bowl. I guess it's really like a cocktail glass, but just drinking some water out of it. I don't know. You guys see this? AutoZone Liberty Bowl. I think this was from 2015 when K-State played Arkansas. Yeah, January 2nd, 2016. So after the 15 season. Very, very on brand glass, I suppose, to do this with. But Kirk Schultz, we've got one more year to hang around and chat with you. It's not like, this is total goodbye right now, but one of the major characters, one of the major players in the great saga that was Big 12 v Pac-12 is going to decide to hang it up. And honestly, if I were Schultz, as far as like retirement, dude, hell yeah, I would want to retire. I don't want to. I mean, look, I don't want to deal with any of this. Washington State's already had some financial issues. Going back to I was reading about that, like $100 million deal that they undertook, like a debt that they undertook to get athletics up to speed, more or less. I wouldn't want to deal with this. All the uncertainty. You don't know what's happening with the college sports landscape. You've been kind of left and abandoned. It's the second stint that you've had as the president of a university where realignment was causing a great existential crisis to your university and athletic department. The AD who just worked with you hand in hand through all of this, just up and left for the rival. Yeah, I'd probably be like, look, man, whatever. I'm old enough. I got the money. I'm set. I'm fine. I don't need any of this. I'll get out. I'll give plenty of runway for them to find the next guy and I'm guy or gal, and I will help them out. But I don't need this. I'm done. I will level with Kirk Schultz and say, I've got empathy on that front too, man. Kind of throw your hands up dude, I don't need this. So there you have it. Kirk Schultz is out. It is buzzer beater time, my friends. Click the $ below the chat box if you got something you want to get in. You've got about 5-ish minutes left in the show. We're going to rip through some of the super chats here in just a moment. But if you have one that you want to get in, make sure and do it now. Click that $ below the chat box. David, what's up, David? Checking in again. Appreciate you, David. Have you seen a pro football locker room? They are like high school, spending money on players. Well, it's funny you say that, David. You are actually kind of right with that. At least my experience here with the Chiefs is there's been a lot of talk locally on sports radio around here about Clark Hunt and just the Chiefs facilities scored very poorly on, I think it's The Athletic that does the anonymous survey at the end of the year. The Chiefs get terrible grades on that. And there were supposedly promises made about the locker room and what they would do to it that weren't really followed through on, and that it's a crappy facility and not that great, which is crazy when you're thinking about, a football dynasty there, one of the best quarterbacks to have ever played the game. And you have mediocre to bad facilities where it would be a lot better if you went to an SEC school. Certainly. Yeah, there is definitely some truth to that. Put the money into the players. Who cares about the locker room? And I think honestly, if you're talking about you saw my reaction when you said, hey, build a dorm. I was like, no, I don't care about building facilities. I care about if I can get the players out there and get better players, yeah, invest it in the players. So I think it's an easier sell probably to donors in some ways for that too. Maybe not, because some of them are looking at hey, I want a more guaranteed ROI. And if I got a building and it's something that's going to have my name on it, that's why they're them with all the money that they have. And I'm me here just trying to be able to mow my front yard on a Sunday. Not having someone do that for me. There probably is some truth to that too. But I think it's a valid point that you make, David. It's a valid point. The most pristine locker rooms are going to be found at the major college football powers as opposed to the NFL in general. Yes. Alan, what's up, Alan? Appreciate you being here, Alan. Thank you. Great to see you as always, my friend. Alan holding it down for the Hawks says, John, Travis Goff invited Fitz to come tour the KU stadium construction. Some issue around state funds. Seems like the whole Big 12 benefits from better KU facilities. What do you think? Rock Chalk Jayhawk Allen. Yeah, that has caused quite a stir on social media. There was a lot of talk about that. There was an article, I think it was just a KUsports.com article. I'm not entirely sure where Travis Goff was speaking when he gave some of the quotes, but I know one of the quotes that came across probably not the way that he wanted it to, I guess, in the article. Sounded like he may have been sort of joking about something, but was talking about phase 2 of the project, latter parts of the project, not the phase 1 that's being worked on now, and said, well, we can't even afford it right now. So K-State fans were poking fun at that, taking shots at that. It sounded like there was they're kind of walking back, like if and or when some of the extra stuff around the stadium was going to be completed, the hotels, restaurants, that sort of thing, which was a part of the pitch to be able to get the tax dollars that went into this. And so I think, then some K-State fans, rival fans, right, are looking at it like, well, really, you got the taxpayer money because of that stuff, and now we're not totally sure that's going to happen. I think Kansas would say, well, yeah, it's a long ways down the road. And Goff was also making the point, this is a huge undertaking now. We can benefit from some time in between this, and we'll be able to survey the landscape and make better decisions then, and yada, yada, yada. So it would come down, how much do you believe that versus it really is a problem and all. I don't get as caught up in it as some people seem to. I'll make I made one very cheap joke at the expense of that quote, but that was it. I'm not like, whatever, man. I mean, they're building the stadium. We're seeing it with professional stadiums like in Kansas City right now. Like, tax dollars generally go to those things now. Whatever. Hopefully K-State someday, when they need new facilities, can find a way to kind of game the system and say, well, it'll benefit everybody in the state of Kansas, so we'll take some tax dollars for it. I know K-State's done it with some buildings like just that are part of the university, not athletics. Hopefully athletics can do the same thing someday. I get why people are frustrated by it. I don't care as much as some. So I'm just sort of in a boat of like, it's not an issue that really sparks a huge response out of me. I don't begrudge anybody that does feel much more strongly about it, but it doesn't, I'm just more concerned with what's going to happen on the field between the two. So now, does the whole Big 12 benefit from better KU facilities? I mean, in some ways, yes. I definitely see what you're saying. Like, you want all the schools to have great facilities and just up the general profile of the conference, for sure. But you're also, if you're thinking about individual schools, you are competing with Kansas. They've got a football coach that certainly is capable of competing with anybody in the league. So you could also turn around and say, well, if you give them better facilities, that's just going to give them more of an edge up there, or pull them more even, or however you want to phrase it. And that's just going to be more for you to have to contend with. So I can understand why some people would say, well, no, that's actually not, we would prefer that they have worse facilities so they're not on an even playing field with us when they're trying to recruit or whatever. But yeah, I mean, in general, yes. It is better if Big 12 schools all have the better facilities there. So yeah, I'll be interested to see if and when that interview does happen. I know Fitz was saying on Twitter that he was going to do it. So let's see it. Very interested to see what happens there. I guess you had said the come tour, an interview was a part of that, I believe, based on what Goff had said on Twitter. So yeah, that's kind of a get out your popcorn sort of a moment there. Yeah, we'll see. Alan, appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for being here, and we'll talk to you soon. Congrats to your Jayhawks on pulling AJ Storr out of the transfer portal. And it sounds like Rylan Griffin, too, is like one of my favorite players in the portal from Bama. I just haven't seen that become official yet. I know like Trilly kind of crystal balled that, but I have not seen that official. Anyway, Alan, thank you, sir. Papa Bravo, what's up, Papa Bravo? Papa Bravo, great job on the Kliavkoff take. Always knew he was as dumb as he looked. Yeah, this would be in reference to the video, if you want to go watch it, from yesterday that I put out, that was about George Kliavkoff selling his WNBA franchise in Vegas for $2 million in 2021. $2 million. And then, that was just right on the cusp of Caitlin Clark and company blowing up the popularity of women's hoops and just women's sports in general, which was already on the come up, by the way, by 2021. It just seems like a ridiculous price to sell that for. And now the last WNBA franchise to be sold, I believe it was pointed out, was sold for like $151 million. So yeah, not a very good financial move there. Not a very good read of the market, which is exactly what happened to Kliavkoff when he was trying to read the market with a TV deal for his conference being the Pac-12. Got outfoxed by Brett Yormark, and did not work out well. So appreciate the shout out there, Papa Bravo. If you guys want to check that out, make sure you go see the video that was released on Saturday about that. David, what's up, David? David says, I think some presidents and ADs will be moving on from schools that are being left behind instead of taking pay cuts. Yeah, it's all relative, right? I mean, the $15 to $20 million is going to hurt. The Big Ten and SEC schools less. It's a lesser percentage of the money that they'll have overall. So yeah, if they're able to maintain more what they are paying, maintain the salaries more than schools further on down the line, that very well could be. Or if it's just, hey, they're not going to have to cut as much, they won't have to make as many sacrifices around the entire department. They'll be keeping more of what you, yeah, that definitely could. I could see that being something that happens there, where things get even more hairy for a little while for the bottom two of the Power Four. And that's just kind of how it's going to be moving forward. Like anything financially related is going to hurt. It's going to hurt the schools at the lower end of the spectrum more because they've got less money, relatively speaking, to everybody else. So, yeah. Now, I guess unless it's a percentage, if all of it is a percentage of your revenue, then maybe it would hurt everybody equally. But if it is just that 15 to 20 million number, that does make some sense. David, appreciate it. Thank you for all of your support throughout the show here today. I very much am grateful for you, my friend, and everybody who hung out tonight on another fun live show. It's going to wrap it up for me, but if you guys could all do me a favor and just click that like button on the way out the door, that would be wonderful. If you still have something, leave it in the comment section under the video. If you didn't watch it live, you're not here live, and you still want to be a part of things, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. That is where you can leave your question or comment, and I will read it to kick off the next show. So you can still get that in there as well if you want to be a part of the show and support the channel. Tell your friends, tell your family, word of mouth. Next time you see them at dinner, let everybody know about the channel. Out with drinks, let your friends know about the channel. Or if you're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, wherever it is that you are at, let everybody know about this channel. Let's continue to grow this wonderful community that we have here. I sincerely appreciate all of you guys who do help me do that. Okay. Thank you all for being here. I will talk to you at the very latest next Wednesday for the live show. Might be able to get you some content there in between. We shall see. We shall see. Appreciate all of you guys. Take care, and I will talk to you soon.